Hello everyone, my name is Jake Harmon, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Weldon Springs Superfund. So Weldon Springs, it is a 17,000 acre site located 30 miles west of St. Charles, Missouri. It contained not only a chemical plant, but a quarry and 20 ordnance factories. So first, so there was basically two big environmental issues that happened on the site. First was the Weldon Springs Ordnance Works. So in 1942, the Army acquired 17,000 acres of land and they built 18 TNT factories and 2 DNT factories. So they're essentially just making explosives for World War II. The Weldon Springs Quarry was used by the Army to mine limestone for the DNT and TNT processing, and then they would transfer their waste products down there where they would just burn them. Uh, a little bit more on this site actually. They also had water treatment facilities on site where they would use wooden pipelines to transfer the wastewater from the factories directly to the treatment sites. And in one case, there's three treatment sites on the 17,000 acres themselves. And then if it didn't go there, they would simply dump it straight into the Missouri River. So that'll be more important later. As I said earlier, there was a second one, which was the Weldon Springs Quarry / plant / pits. It was a chemical plant that was used to process uranium ore. This is after the war. After the site sat idle for about 15 years, I believe. It was used by the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission as a dump for uranium and thorium residue from the chemical plant. That's the quarry. At the Weldon Springs Ordnance Works, the TNT and DNT were waste products. There was trace amounts in the wastewater after they purified it, and then, as I said earlier, it would leak out of the wooden pipelines that were buried underground, and it would contaminate the soil and the water table, and also be dumped into the Missouri River directly. For the plant and quarry pits site, the uranium and thorium residue from the chemical plant was dumped into pits, and specifically the quarry, exactly where the TNT and DNT residue was. They essentially just used it as a giant dump. And not only that, but they also brought in chemical or contaminated soil and rubble from another chemical plant that was in St. Louis. They would also bring that in and just use it, dump it into the quarry, which they were already using as a dump. So the groundwater in the soil was obviously contaminated with uranium, thorium, DNT, and TNT from not only dumping them into the quarry, but also through the pipelines. There's a picture of just a generic quarry there on the left. I thought it was important to leave in there because you can see that down at the bottom. There's the water table is right there. So even in a case where the quarry wasn't dug that deep, it was going to be way closer to the water table than just getting rid of the waste in a normal manner. It led to the contamination of the water table in the area and the rehousing of 3 towns and 537 citizens. This was way after they had already found out that it took a while for them to find out that the soil on the water table was contaminated, and after that they just had to essentially just kick everybody out because you can't live there. The water's contaminated. You're not going to be able to use your wells. So operable Unit 1 was issued. This dealt with the soils and pipelines. This is essentially just the cleanup of the area. This was excavation and burning of contaminated soils and pipelines. Most of the stuff they had to do, though, they couldn't really do much to it. I mean, they removed the pipelines. The soil itself, they had to just leave it to naturally rebuild itself, just naturally filter out all the contaminants. So that's why they moved everybody off the site. And then operable Unit 2, this dealt with the groundwater, and this was basically the same thing. They couldn't really do anything about the contaminated groundwater other than move everybody off the site. So they move everybody out, and the water that was, or the wastewater that was dumped in the river, that's going to filter out way quicker than in the soil. So that wasn't a big issue. But the contaminated soil and groundwater, they can't, build with it. They can't farm with it. They can't drink. So they just moved everybody out. It was declared a Superfund in the late 1980s by the Environmental Protection Agency. Following the declaration, over 1.48 million cubic meters of toxic waste were collected and transferred to a giant holding cell. There's a picture of it here on, I believe, the next slide. I'll show you that. The holding cell is now considered a tourist attraction, and then the groundwater in Seven Springs continue to be monitored and are obviously not used as drinking water. So here's the giant mound and holding cell that I was talking about. You can see there's a path that goes all the way up to it. You can walk all the way up. It's 75 feet high. There's a information panel there at the top. There's some benches, and then in the background you can see there's the tourist center for the site. And then other than that, they couldn't really do anything much with the land. They obviously moved everybody off. So they utilized it and put a bunch of trails and hiking and whatnot, things that won't involve dealing with a water table or building. So that's basically all I got. Thank you.